Welcome to another episode of Making Sense of Coronavirus. We're so glad you've joined us. You're very welcome. This is a series of short interviews where I sit down with people who've been impacted by this global pandemic in different ways. And we discuss what life is like in a coronavirus world, and we talk about what hope there is and what help there is for us as we live through these uncertain days. This time round, I had the wonderful privilege of sitting down with Cameron Jones. Cameron has just started work with Irish Church Missions down in Dublin, but at the moment he's up in Northern Ireland in Donaghadee. He's been caught between houses. He and his wife Alex have sold a house and bought another house in Dublin, but the pandemic hit and the restrictions and lockdown hit just as they were about to move into their new house. So we sat down with them to talk about what it's been like to be functionally homeless during a pandemic. And here's what Cameron had to say as we sat down together. Well, Cameron, thank you so much for joining us. Cameron, you're kind of in between houses at the moment. You're living up in Northern Ireland at the moment, Carrickfergus, is that right?
Yeah, we're actually in Donaghadee at the moment.
Donaghadee. Great. And tell us a little bit about you are married to Alex and
right.
you're in lockdown together at the moment. What's the last few months been like for you?
Well, not at all like we thought they would be. I think that's true of everyone, isn't it? But we took on, I finished my curacy at Carrickfergus, which is why that was in your mind. So I finished my time there, moved out of the house, and we sold our house that we also had in Belfast, so we could buy a house in Dublin, so we could start the work with Irish Church Missions that we'd been invited to do. And someone very kindly provided their holiday house at Donaghadee, so we could stay there for a couple of months. And a couple of months have turned into about 8 months, and we've been able to secure a house in Dublin, and we can't move to it because of all of the restrictions about travel. So we've really been in a limbo kind of situation for a good number of months.
So it's kind of extended holiday house, is that right?
I mean, it's a lovely place to be, but one of the things that we've learned is that it might be a pleasant location, but we're not surrounded by our stuff. It's not home. And we're sort of learning how much of an impact that has on us. And we, in our hearts, have been heading towards Dublin really for the last 2 years. It's been 2 years since we were invited to come down and do this new work with Irish Church Missions. And so we're just ready to go, but we keep on feeling frustrated by all the things that have come up.
Great, and we'll get onto in a moment what it's been like kind of in limbo in between houses and what it's been like to have a house and have seen it but not actually move into it. But tell us a little bit first for the last few months, kind of 2-3 months or so. What have you been doing in lockdown? What's lockdown been like with you? Have you been able to? I know you're about to move to start a new job, but have you been able to start things? What kind of things have you been doing through lockdown?
Yeah. Well, we've been trying. There's been a lot of organisational stuff to do. So where do our belongings go to, and where do we keep them, and how do we let the NHS know where we're living so we can get medical care while we don't actually have a residence? And so there's been a lot of administrative back and forth and those kinds of things. It's been remarkable how much we have been able to do using things like Zoom and any number of other things. And so I've been actually, you can hear that I'm not originally from Northern Ireland. We're Australian, and we've made some reconnections with some people back in Australia who are at churches and old friends, which has just really been lovely. We may not have done that at all if this hadn't happened. I've also been able to preach for churches that we're geographically nowhere near using Facebook and YouTube and that type of thing. I did a series for some churches, a group of churches that get together at Easter. In fact, I did it the year before this and did a series on Matthew's account of the time leading up to Jesus' death and I did a series of Holy Week talks for them, and they invited me back. And then COVID started, and so they invited me to do it via video. And so I recorded a series of talks for them. So there's been any number of busynesses, and I've been able to preach for, even though we're at Donaghadee, I've been able to preach for Emmanuel Church in Dublin via Facebook. So we've been busy, but a lot of the time I can't account for. Days seem to slip by, and I know I've been doing stuff, but I can't for the life of you to really remember what it was. So it's a strange time, and it's also sometimes really tiring. All these meetings on Zoom seem to take so much more energy than if I was in a room with people, and get to the end of the day, and I sometimes can't really tell what I've done, but I feel exhausted. So it's a lovely place. We're not far from the beach. The dog's loving it. We've got an English setter, and he loves where we're living. It's going to be a bit of a shock when we move, but being productive, but sometimes not feeling it, and often feeling quite tired.
Sounds fairly normal for most people, I think, in this time. Yeah, I'm finding kind of black holes of everything kind of seems to disappear down, and when you're kind of just go to put something up on the internet or something. But tell us a little bit now. So you're in between houses, and you've seen your new house, but not moving into it. What does that feel like? What's that been like for you? I suppose not really to be essentially kind of homeless, but with a home, but not able to go into it. What's that been like for both of you? How have you found it?
Yeah, I've used the word frustrating before, but that is very much the word. And also very uncertain. And that combination of frustration, of uncertainty is quite draining. And so it's not been at all easy. So I think that's also contributed to the tiredness. Not knowing is not pleasant. So not only are we living in someone's house that is very kindly being provided for us while we wait for the house, for the time to be able to move to our new house, the house in which we're currently living has also been sold. And so we need to be moving out of this house in about two weeks' time, but we can't move down to Dublin yet. We do have another option, as far as we can tell, to go to, but that having to move again is just so. It's not a pleasant prospect to look forward to. Anyone who's moved house knows how much goes into it. Even if you're moving next door, it's a lot of mental work. We're moving perhaps to another house and then another one, and in the meantime, the house in Dublin needs to get some work to it. It needs a new boiler, it needs a shower, it needs all these other things. And so we know we've got to move, but we can't move to where we're eventually going to go. And that actually puts a lot of emotional strain on both of us.
It's difficult, and the not knowing must be hard.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit. So you've kind of hinted before you're kind of working for Irish Church Missions, which is a Christian organisation. Tell us a little bit, for you and for your wife as Christians, what difference has being a Christian made as you've faced all these challenges, the frustrations, the weariness of being kind of essentially homeless and not knowing when you can move?
Yeah, we're about the most comfortable homeless people in the world, I think. But that's a great question. I think the first thing to say is that if we were not Christians, we would not be in this situation. A lot of the difficulty we're facing is because we're Christians. We would not be on this side of the world if we were not Christians. We'd be still back in Sydney, Australia, in our sort of comfortable big house that we left back there. We would not have said yes to a new project with Irish Church Missions if we were not Christians. We wouldn't be living in temporary accommodation if we were not Christians. If we were not Christians, we wouldn't have been here. it's a much harder life for us because we're Christians. But also we're not surprised, because nowhere in the Bible does it say that leading a Christian life is going to be leading an easy life. So the only reason we'd be surprised, even by things like that, I mean, we're not receiving sort of death threats, and we're not having people surrounding our house and saying that we should renounce Jesus or die. That's not happening to us. We're not being persecuted like that. But a lot of the hardship we're facing is because we really believe that Jesus died and that Jesus rose again. And so, yes, it is difficult, but we're not surprised by that, because the Bible tells us the Christian life will be difficult. The only reason we would be surprised would be if we weren't listening to the Bible well enough. That doesn't make it easy, but first of all, we're not too surprised. And that's the first thing to say. The other thing to say is that it sort of helped us realise that all those things we thought we were in control of, we actually should have known we weren't in control of. That's one of the things that COVID's actually knocked into us a bit more forcefully. We were able to imagine a whole series of futures for ourselves, and most of those have been sort of knocked away. And it's reminded us, actually, all those things that we thought we were in control of, we're not in control of. And isn't it great that we are the children of the God who is in control of it? We may not be able to see the future, but he can. He knows what's going to happen. We're his children. He cares for us. And he is trustworthy, even when times are hard. So that's one of the things I think it doesn't make everything easy. And sometimes we still have moments where we have a bit of a breakdown and we have tears and we find it really hard. But even in the midst of that, we can do that knowing that God knows what he's doing. So that's been one of the things that we've really had reinforced to us during this time.
Great. That's wonderful to remember that, isn't it? It's quite freeing to know that we don't have to be in control. One who is. And as someone who knows the Lord Jesus and trusts him, what difference? So we live in a world, don't we, that I think this time last year, none of us would ever dreamed we'd be living in a world like this, a COVID-19 world with all the chaos and confusion that it brings. What hope does Jesus offer, would you say, in a COVID-19 world?
Yeah. He offers exactly the same hope as he did in the world before COVID-19. COVID-19 has not made Jesus any more crucified, and COVID-19 has not made Jesus any more resurrected or any less resurrected. To some extent, in the most important way there is, this has changed nothing. In the most important way there is, it's changed nothing in terms of people needing desperately to hear that. That's the thing that is most important now as it was before. Maybe even me saying that will just jog that a little bit in people's minds as well. In a life that's quite comfortable, it's really easy to forget how dependent we are on God. In a life that's comfortable, it's really easy to forget how important it is that Jesus died and rose again. In a life that's comfortable, it can be hard to remember that our neighbours, unless they trust in him alone, are utterly lost. It's hard. And I think that's because it's just so easy to put our trust in things that look permanent but aren't. Our owning a house looked permanent, but we sold it and now we're in an impermanent, uncertain situation. But again, like I said before, that doesn't change the fact that the people who we're living nearby now who don't know Jesus need to know him. So as we've been going for a walk on the beach that's nearby, we've been looking for opportunities to tell them about Jesus, because we had reinforced to us that really is the most important thing. So in fact, nothing has changed, but what may have changed is our mindset on it. And maybe that's given me a little bit more urgency for the people in the Silicon Docks area of Dublin, which is the area we're focusing on in this ministry with Irish Church Missions. How desperately they need to hear about Jesus.
Thank you. It's good to know, isn't it, that this hasn't changed the most important things, has it? And probably that's one of the most important things we can remember at this time. Actually, so many things do seem to have changed, don't they? But actually ultimately things haven't changed. Jesus is the same, isn't he?
Yep, Jesus is still Lord. He's still coming back. Still longing to see him. And while we're waiting, we've got a job to do.
Well, Cameron, I think that's a wonderful note to end things on. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely to hear a voice from the other side of the world, even if you're not that far away. But thank you so much for sharing with us this afternoon. It's been wonderful.
It's a real pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you with us. There's going to be more of these videos coming out in the near future, so do keep your eyes out for those. If in the meantime you'd like to explore a little bit more, or perhaps to speak to somebody, you can do that through our website. The details of that will be up at the end of this video. There's lots of resources there and the opportunity to get in touch with us. So do head over to the website if you're interested in that. You're also very welcome to join us on a Sunday morning. Every Sunday morning we have a live stream service at 10:30 on YouTube. And the details of that are also up on the website or on our Facebook page. So do keep an eye out for those as well. But it's been lovely to speak to you again, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Goodbye.